When I see you dancing, I'm like, hola, 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 hola. With your move fancy, make me wanna hola, 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 hola. I got your attention, spending that moolah, 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 moolah. I'm a drop popping, pocket, swola, 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 swola.
You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristadoulou.
Oh, welcome back, everybody. It is Thursday, February 11th, 2021. I am your host, Ethan Haristadoulou, and I would like to welcome you to basically the offseason of the NFL. Not a whole lot's going to be going on throughout these next few weeks. My plan is to still run the show every Monday and Thursday at 1 p.m. ET. And we're just going to kind of be talking about everything that's going on in the league between the NFL and other leagues we'll be covering throughout the offseason. We have a pretty good list of things to talk about today. First things first, I'm going to hold off on the question of the day like I typically do at the start of every show, because the question of the day kind of rolls into something that I plan on talking about fairly early on in the show. I have two things I'm going to hit on first before we actually jump into other stuff. So with that being said, first things first, we're going to just throw this out here. For those of you that did not know, I will be covering the National Arena League, which is a semi-pro football league indoors inside an arena. The big news coming out from that league the other day is that they will be postponing their season until May 22nd. I believe they were supposed to start fairly early in the month of April. They've cut the season down to 8 games as well. So some big changes going on for that league. Like I said, I still plan on covering it. The fact that it's moving back into May, which I believe it starts post NFL draft. I'm not 100% sure the exact date of the draft yet, but I think that's post NFL draft, means there's going to be that really long, slow season of nothing going on into training camp. So that'll kind of work out in my favor specifically. Unfortunate for the players of the league. I have a couple of friends who are on a few teams in that league, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to bring them onto the show and talk to them as that season rolls through for them. I did speak to one just the other day, asking him just some questions on like the ramifications of the league, moving the season back, cutting some of the games out too. My hope is that maybe I'll be able to bring him on and talk to him at some point too, so you can kind of go into a little bit more details if he is able to, once we get closer to them kind of knowing what's going to happen based off the league pushing everything back and shortening the season. But that is the first thing I wanted to just kind of knock out and get out of the way. Big news for that. Unfortunate, but it kind of does work out for me selfishly, funny enough. Beyond that, looking forward, this is something that I wanted to start the show off with. If you did not see what was going on in Tampa Bay yesterday, you want to talk about absolute mayhem. I live in Massachusetts. I've seen 6 parades go by in my years living here, in my 25 years. For those of you that do know, don't know, I am not a Patriots fan. I actually grew up an Indianapolis Colts fan living in Massachusetts. Pretty wild thing to be or team to be a fan of, considering where I am and the rivalries that went behind that. For the backstory on that, essentially the very first game I ever sat down and watched that I remember watching was Super Bowl 41 with Peyton Manning beating the Bears that year. And from then on, I just became a big Manning fan, and thus leading into my Colts fandom. Also, funny enough, being the season right before the Patriots went on that big undefeated run. Now, back onto the topic of the Bucs Super Bowl parade. Holy shit. Again, talk about madness. I cannot believe some of the things that we were seeing going on. First of all, it took place on a river that runs through Tampa. Now, if you don't know about Tampa, Tampa is a very boat-centric area. I actually went to a festival a few years back in February called Gasparilla. It's a giant pirate festival. They bring out old-fashioned pirate ships into the bay. They're firing off cannons. Everyone dresses up like pirates. You want to talk about absolute mayhem on the water? Gasparilla is a fine example of that. And that's typically that happens during this month. So the fact that they just had the Super Bowl parade, which was on the water, everyone was on boats. There had to be booze everywhere. It seemed like there was not a single person in that area that could not have been having a good time. You'd be hard pressed to find anybody who wasn't really enjoying themselves. Now, I have a couple of videos I do want to share with you guys. If you didn't see these, Tom Brady was videotaped throwing the Lombardi, and I'm almost positive that's the Lombardi trophy. I mean, unless this is like a fake one that they're given to just party around with, which I wouldn't be surprised. I know like the NHL, like their Stanley Cup is just that one championship, and they don't have like a fake one for teams to run around with. So whatever goes on that chip, that is the real thing. But Brady was videotaped throwing the championship to Gronk from one boat to another. And I found a really good video of almost like the perspective of Brady and the people on his $2 million yacht that he was floating around with. Everyone on Tampa just looked like they were having a good time. Like I said, I've seen the parades here in New England. It's freezing in the winter. It's cold, the duck boats and everything. It's awesome. Yes. But this is exactly what I'm talking about, where if I was to go to a Super Bowl parade, I'm jealous. I wish that I was in Tampa for this. It looked so insane. Now, I'll go ahead. I'm going to play this video for you guys just so you can take a quick look. Absolute mayhem. Mike's still muted there. You want to talk about an absolute insane scene of events. I mean, Brady throwing the Lombardi from one boat to another. That's insane. And that's one of those things, like you see it and you're like, is he supposed to be doing that? Like, I mean, they won the championship. They can do what they want. But I mean, you've never seen something like that with the Lombardi. So for that going on, I mean, as a football fan, I love it. I love to see something like that, especially with, the things that have come out with how Brady felt in New England over the years and just how rigid everything is up in New England. I mean, this is a Brady that I don't think we've ever really seen before. And I love to see him. He literally looks like a 43-year-old frat guy, and he's just having a real good time, living it up out in Tampa. Nice weather, throwing a who knows how much dollar value championship. I mean, what an absolute just show of events this thing was. I actually have another video I'll share with you guys too that I want you to be able to see as well. This is a second video. Now, again, Tom Brady, completely different person that we've seen from his years in New England. And when I saw this video, oh my God, had me rolling laughing. I'll roll this one for you guys as well. Again, another prime example of Brady just absolutely loving his time up in Tampa, being the champ that he is now out there, stumbling out of the gates, just laughing his ass off. I mean, this is reminiscent of my younger days, drinking with all the friends. And he even does the thing. He's calling to his boy, runs up to him, pats him on the chest. I mean, that is a Brady that you just have not ever seen before, and you love to see it. You love to see it. You love to see it. But yeah, just absolute mayhem going on out there in Tampa Bay. It looked like everyone was having a good time. Again, Brady came rolling in on his $2 million yacht. That's one of those things that, it's awesome to see Brady be a little bit more himself. Considering we got a little more like confined, structured, I don't know, it felt like a suit type of Brady. And now in Tampa, he's just very loose himself. That's stuff that I don't think you would have ever saw if he was still in New England. So awesome for him. Love to see the celebration the way it was out there. Made me smile from ear to ear seeing videos like that of Brady having such a good time. But I just wanted to get the show going with that. That was absolute mayhem out in Tampa. Awesome time. Again, congrats to the Buccaneers on their big Super Bowl win. From the sounds of it, they're trying to bring everyone back. A lot of the players want to be back. And would I be surprised should the Tampa Bay Buccaneers end up in the Super Bowl again next year? Honestly, with the way that defense looked and the way that offense looked, once they got everything clicking, I mean, Brady could be there for another year or two in that championship game. So, I mean, good luck to the rest of the NFC, because that team was hot in the playoffs. And if they carry that over in next year, there's no telling you what this Buccaneers team can do for the next couple of years going forward. But moving on, we'll jump right into what I normally start with, the question of the day. Like I mentioned, I wanted to push this back because this kind of ties into what I'm about to talk about next. So for my first question, or for the question of the day, rather, rumors of Russell Wilson being frustrated with the Seattle Seahawks have been starting to leak out here. This is a pretty big deal because Russell Wilson, I believe, only has one more year left on his contract. I have it written down. Oh, no, he has 2 more years left on his deal. So he was doing a couple of interviews the last few days, and one specifically where he kind of really let off, some things that were on his chest. It sounds like he's not happy with the way that they've tried protecting him. Well, they haven't really tried protecting him. He has been sacked his first 9 years in the league a record 394 times since the AFL and NFL merged together in 1970. The next person behind him is Randall Cunningham at 366. Now, to put that into perspective, a rough average of sacks in a year, about 20 to 26, maybe a little bit on the higher side if the offensive line isn't really good. Russell Wilson has about a whole season's worth of sacks over Randall Cunningham in that statistic. That's absolutely insane. He's been, he was quoted as saying, he wants to be more involved in the personnel decisions being made there in Seattle. He kind of pointed to Tom Brady going to Tampa Bay this year and being able to not call the shots necessarily, but kind of dictate, a few of the players that came in and stuff like that. The Deshaun Watson thing kind of, I feel, has started this, and that you've kind of been seeing this rear its head the last couple of years, especially with social media, players becoming more and more vocal about where they want to go and things they want to see on the team. I am on board with, faces of the franchises, the leaders of the teams, maybe having a little bit of input on things. But it's one of those things where it's like you are just the player to the team at the end of the day. Like, the team is the brand. You are just a piece of that, that machine that's running like another gear. But for someone like Russell Wilson, who's been, he's a Super Bowl champion, he's been in the league 9 years. He is a big part of the Seattle Seahawks team. I totally agree with him. And you see the success that Brady had over in Tampa Bay, being able to kind of, pick a few players up that he wanted to see come in. Like, I'm sure he had, his say in with Leonard Fournette coming. Obviously he had his say in Gronk and Brown coming in. So in the one way you kind of look at that is, these players, they're on the team, they're talking every single day. The personnel don't necessarily know everything that's going on as far as chemistry within a team, that they're not the ones in the trenches every single game on that field together. The players have their meetings and whatnot that is separate from the personnel, so seeing people that are legitimate leaders of the team want kind of input into what's going on a football team, I'm actually for. I don't think everyone should have the input, but someone like Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, the guys that are the perennial leaders of the team that have made those teams successful, their past teams successful, they totally should have some sort of input. How much? I mean, that's not really up for me to say, but they should be listened to. They are the respected leaders in the locker room, essentially the voice of that locker room. So if you're going to be listening to anyone, it's going to be those people. So my question going off all of that is, with the frustration that is boiling with Russell Wilson, and the quarterback market seems to be moving a lot this year and potentially even next year with some of the contracts that are coming up. Russell Wilson has 2 years left on his deal. He has a pretty good out point for being traded next year or released next year. I doubt he would be released, though. If Seattle was to get rid of him, it would probably be through trade next year, most likely, if they couldn't, figure something out. Do you think he'll end up moving somewhere? I think it's kind of like a 50-50 shot. Brandon Marshall was quoted as saying that he thinks, and this is quote for quote, Russell Wilson is beyond frustrated. I think Russell Wilson is trying to figure a way out, how to move on in a classy way. That's what I truly believe. This is somebody who played with Russell Wilson, and he's a receiver. Receivers and quarterbacks have very good relationships. And Brandon Marshall, he's an OG guy, especially when he was on that team. He's tenured. So I'm sure that, they had a lot of conversation that you probably wouldn't have with like a first or second year guy, someone that hasn't really been around, that doesn't really know the league as well. But Brandon Marshall, he was around for a long time, especially at that point when he went to Seattle. If Russell Wilson is as frustrated as he claims to be, and they don't start to, figure something out in terms of protecting him, I could see him forcing his way out. This year, if they were to trade him, that's $39 million in dead money. I talked about this, I believe, last week. Jared Goff currently at the record, I think, for most dead money on a team right now at $22.2 million. So, I mean, $39 million is a steep hill to climb, especially with a salary cap situation coming up next year. He's not a free agent until 2024 at the end of the 2023 season. So going into the 2024 offseason. I don't know if he would move this year. I could definitely see it next year. There's a lot of teams that obviously need quarterbacks. And you would really need things to fall off the wagon for that to happen. I think Russell Wilson more than likely stays, but the hot topic seems to be, is Russell Wilson going to be a big name that ends up being on the move? If he's really that frustrated, he's going out in interviews and voicing his thoughts and opinions. I mean, he needs help. The dude's been sacked almost 400 times. It's a career. It's an NFL record at this point. Like, he needs help. That's a whole season's worth more than the next person behind him. And, you know, Russell Wilson is a star. He's a fantastic player. And the last thing you want is for, you know, like the Andrew Luck situation to happen, for his career to get cut short because he's getting hurt. Granted, you know, he has been more durable than Luck was. Luck was taking an absolute pummeling, and I believe he was leading the sacks before he left. But you want to avoid a situation like that. You don't want the NFL to lose a player over something that way. So do you guys think Russell Wilson's going to be going anywhere? I personally think it's very unlikely this year. Could I see it next year if things don't change and he's still just as unhappy? Definitely. There's a much more lenient way out for the Seahawks to get out of that. A lot less dead money would be on the cap. The cap would go back up after that season, assuming, you know, the NFL is able to run a regular year with fans and all. I definitely think it's a possibility. I don't think it's going to be happening this year. It's very unlikely. But what I love to see, I'm all for big moves. So would I love to see Russell Wilson on another team? Hell yeah. I'm a Colts fan. We need a quarterback. Let's trade for him if I'm talking here. But I don't really see it as something that's likely for this season, but it is possible. So you guys let me know down in chat what you think. Up next, another and more in player news, Orlando Brown. He was the starting right tackle, got pushed over to left tackle for the Baltimore Ravens due to Ronnie Staley being out for most of the season. He is, it sounds like he's trying to push his way on out of the Baltimore Ravens. He does not want to go back to playing right tackle. He was playing left tackle for the majority of the year. That is his original position. He was in college as a left tackle. And a few other things that I've read, his father also wanted him to be a left tackle. So this is like, it's a personal thing for him. It's a preference thing for him. I've seen a lot of people on like Twitter and other posts, you know, what's the difference between left tackle and right tackle? Well, I mean, it's two different stances. Everyone has a dominant side that they prefer to work with. I'm assuming if you play left tackle your almost entire career from, you know, whether it's Pop Warner or Pee Wee football to, you know, the high school level to the college level, and then suddenly you get kicked over to right tackle. And Orlando Brown made the adjustment, but I really think that it's a preference thing. It's probably a personal thing. And on top of that, it's got to be a money thing. Left tackles make significantly more money than right tackles because of the fact that they're typically protecting the blind side. There's 31 teams that have left tackles that are protecting the blind side. Only the Dolphins have a left-handed quarterback where theoretically the right tackle is the left tackle of the team. But when you're protecting the blind side, you're typically making more money. Of the top 10 tackles in the league, money-wise being paid, I believe only 2 of them are actually right tackles. The remainder are all left tackles, and there's a $5 million difference between the top-paid left tackle and the top-paid right tackle. So he has 1 more year left on his rookie deal. It seems like he wants to be able to cash in on that, and it's a preference thing. It could be a personal thing. There's a lot that could go into that. And at this point, if he's going to be getting traded, the Ravens are going to want a lot. Orlando Brown is a really good right tackle or left tackle for them, excuse me. So, I mean, he's young. He's got the tools. You know, he's going to be around for a while, at least from what it looks like, barring any crazy injuries or something like that. So it sounds like he wants out. Does he end up moving? If the Ravens get the compensation for it, I could definitely see it happening. Again, he only has 1 year left on his deal. I believe the money is around like $3 million or so. It's not a whole bunch because it's a rookie contract, and he was only drafted in the 3rd round. So he's not owed a bunch of money. The Ravens don't eat a lot should they trade him. I think it's hardly anything if they do eat anything at all. So that's definitely a possibility of seeing Orlando Brown move again. And he was even quoted as saying, you know, he wants to play for a team that wants to play him at left tackle, and he does not want to play anywhere else at right tackle. So he's kind of like, it almost sounds like he's in a position where he's saying, you know, if I'm not playing left tackle, I don't want to play at all, which is a pretty crazy stance to take. But if a team needs a left tackle bad enough and, you know, they're willing to trade some compensation for him and they're getting such a low cap number for a year, I could definitely see him being traded without a doubt. Moving forward, though, with some more player news, Marcus Mariota, for those of you that do not know, he used to be the starter for the Tennessee Titans. He got moved over to the Oakland Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders. Las Vegas Raiders. He's rumored to be bringing in a lot of trade interest, per Ian Rappaport. The Patriots have been a team that are rumored to have spoken internally about potentially bringing him in. He does have a year left on his deal, and any team that takes him is going to be on the hook for about $10.6 million. That's not a whole lot of money, especially at the quarterback position. That is a discount. He looked pretty good in the one game he played for the Raiders, and that's kind of why the rumor mill is swirling a bit about it. People are thinking that, if he goes to another team that maybe fits his play style better, or maybe has somebody that's like a quarterback coach guru that could really help bring out the best of him, they have a feeling, especially with, funny enough, the guy who took his job in Tennessee, Ryan Tannehill, having a massive resurgence after being considered a draft bust when he was in Miami. People seem to kind of think, okay, maybe he could be on that same trajectory as Ryan Tannehill, where, it just didn't work out on the team he was in, scheme fit, whatever it may be. And now potentially if he goes somewhere that will fit him a little bit better, he could be at best, a very good quarterback. So a lot of interest going into Marcus Mariota. The Raiders have also been phoning calls in for Derek Carr, I've read as well. It sounds that they are more inclined to move Mariota than Derek Carr. They haven't shut the door on phone calls. They're listening. But it seems like if they were to move either of their two quarterbacks, it's probably going to be Marcus Mariota over Derek Carr. I would be shocked if Derek Carr goes. I believe he's owed a fair amount of money, and it seems like Mariota is the more likely person. He's well below the current QB market value. It just seems like a good deal for a team that maybe either needs a bridge quarterback or, is hoping that they can pull the best out of Mariota. And then as far as the last thing for player news goes, Carson Wentz, that whole situation just seems, it's so weird. He still hasn't moved. Reports came out last weekend that he was going to be on the move within the next few days. Some people were even, going as far as to say by the end of the Super Bowl, he's not going to be an Eagle anymore. The rumors are still swirling. It sounds like the Eagles still do want to move him. It's just that they haven't gotten the compensation that they're looking for. That's such a tricky situation because with the amount of Carson Wentz was fantastic early on, and he's obviously shown some decline since, his injury during that year where he was in the MVP conversation. It's weird because the Eagles benched him, which essentially tells the rest of the league, we don't think that you're good enough to start, at least for us. So for them to then flip around and want to trade him and then feel they're not getting the correct draft compensation, you're kind of backing yourself into a corner. This is a guy you don't want, someone that you thought a rookie was, the better opportunity for you guys to win as a starter, and you benched him for that rookie. And then you're going to flip the table and also be like, but we want this much for him. It doesn't really make sense to me. And the Eagles have been, they've been dealing with a fair amount of drama and just a lot going on with, internally. And this just kind of like stacks on top of it. The whole Carson Wentz situation has just become very weird. It feels very tense. My hope is that Carson Wentz gets out of there. I feel what would be best for him is for him to be able to move on from the Eagles, go somewhere. And I wasn't really on the wagon at first, but the more I think about it, Wentz was having his MVP-like season the year Frank Reich was there. If he went to somewhere like Indy, somewhere like Chicago, somewhere like New England, where granted he has a massive salary cap number, but some of those teams have the salary cap to pick him up. If he has a good staff around him, some good players around him, New England has a ton of salary cap space. So if they're bringing in someone like Wentz, you would have to think they're probably going to try and pick up a big receiver. Allen Robinson's a free agent. Juju Smith-Schuster's looking like he's going to be a free agent unless these players get signed at some point during this offseason. T.Y. Hilton, there's so many receivers in this class of the free agency that there's a good opportunity. If he went somewhere like New England, they could also pick up pieces to build around him and play. They have a solid offensive line. They have a solid running back group. So like somewhere like the Patriots would be a good team for him. Frank Reich, obviously being a quarterback coach, he knew, or the offensive coordinator, he knew when he was in Philadelphia, those few years ago. So it seems like the real holdup is just Philly looking for what they deem as a fair offer. I think they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot. They should just get what they can for him and move on. That is an absolute mess. And, like I said, I don't really understand how you're going to bench a player and then turn around and say, oh, but we need proper compensation to get rid of him. You don't even want to start him to begin with. So how are you going to sit here and say he's valuable? Just whatever the best offer is, field them, maybe see if you can get anything better, and then just cut it loose. I mean, that's just become a toxic relationship. It does not look good on the Eagles. I mean, I don't know. For me, I like to see, the players end up in the best position possible. I feel for Carson Wentz. He definitely feels unwanted there. There's a statue sitting outside the Eagles stadium of Nick Foles. I mean, I personally think the Eagles made a huge mistake in not keeping Foles. They should have kept him and, sent Carson Wentz elsewhere without giving him that massive contract. I felt it just would have been better for all sides because now, they gave him the money, but, the statue of another quarterback is sitting outside your stadium. Everyone's questioning whether you're like the guy for them or not after getting hurt and not getting back to form. It's just a whole mess of a situation. I really feel for Carson Wentz. Hopefully that gets sorted out soon. Maybe in the next few days, this weekend or something, we'll see some motion happening. Unless, they're somehow able to salvage their relationship with Carson Wentz. And that's pretty much it for all the player news that I picked out that I thought was very important to talk about or at least worth mentioning. A few other things that I do want to go over. Firstly, the Super Bowl 56 location has been announced. It's not really a surprise. Everyone was kind of picking this spot anyways. The Super Bowl will be held in Las Vegas at SoFi Stadium. For those of you who have not seen SoFi Stadium, I do actually have an image for you guys here. This place looks nice. I mean, you want to talk about something straight out of the future. SoFi Stadium is I believe a $3+ billion project. A lot of money has been put into this. And the field looks fantastic. So I'll go ahead. I'll give you a quick screen grab of this so you guys can see what this place is looking like. Pull this up real quick. So this is SoFi Stadium. Absolutely beautiful. I mean, just from top to bottom, they got the massive LED screens that wrap around the entire stadium. You got the nice Rams logo there in the middle. This is obviously being shared between the Chargers and the Rams. For those of you that did not know that, this goes for both teams. They both share a stadium out in California right now. I believe the Rams ownership is the one who paid for the majority of it, and the Chargers are kind of just leasing the stadium from them. So that's kind of how that whole situation is working out. But a beautiful stadium, great location for the Super Bowl. I think Las Vegas will be just an absolute party come this time next year when that Super Bowl rolls around that first week of February. Beautiful stadium, beautiful location, party town. You can't really ask for much else. Should be a good time, I'm sure. But that's what the stadium is going to be looking like. Just wanted to share that with you guys so you get a little bit of a peek if you have not seen what SoFi Stadium looks like. It hasn't really been able to be presented as nicely as it could be because of the fact that, this whole global situation has prevented that. But wicked excited to see how that goes. I've always had a dream of going to the Super Bowl myself. Would love to be able to make that maybe my first Super Bowl ever at a stadium there in Vegas would be awesome. Hopefully the global situation kind of sorts itself out and we'll be able to get back to having, full crowds and things like that within the next year or so. So that Super Bowl isn't just 25,000 fans and then 30,000 cutouts, which if any of you watched the Super Bowl, this is then, a little off topic here. It did not look like there was only 25,000 fans here. I'm not going to speculate on the NFL lying or anything like that, but I was even talking to my dad about this. It did not look like there was only 25,000 people there, and maybe it was because the cutouts made that look that good, but to me personally, that looked like maybe 35,000 people or more. You could argue that. I don't know. That's just kind of how it looked to me. But the last piece of news that I wanted to talk to you about here on this Thursday afternoon before I let you guys go and enjoy the rest of your week, Texans turnover. The drama just seems to continue out in Houston. They are not catching a break. It seemed like it took them a long time to hire a head coach in David Culley, and I don't even know if that was their, second option or their even third option. It did not seem like anyone was really rushing to go there. Their team president, Jamie Roots, resigned from his position. He was quoted as saying that he has been looking to resign for a couple of years now, at least. Whether you buy that or not, I guess is totally up to you. I think with everything that has been going on in that area of the of Houston, that team has been a mess for the last couple of years. Bill O'Brien was essentially trading the future away. and terrible coaching. J.J. Watt was gone on record calling out teammates for their poor performances and kind of just giving up on the season. Obviously, Deshaun Watson wants to get the hell out of there. The DeAndre Hopkins trade. There is just so much that you could go on about with the Houston Texans, and it just feels like the turnover there just continues on, and that boat just keeps sinking deeper and deeper. Hopefully, with all this change, and if they're able to sort this whole issue out with Deshaun Watson, because the Texans are firmly saying, and apparently not listening to phone calls saying that they are not trading Watson, that it's not happening. I don't know how much I buy that. I don't know if they're trying to wait it out and see, but if Watson doesn't want to be there, Watson doesn't want to be there. And I really am very interested in seeing how this plays out. I mean, he could realistically sit the entire year. I don't know if he would actually do that. That would be rather jarring to me, if you ask me. I would love to see him go somewhere else and play for a team that would maybe put him in a better position. I just think that Texans team is looking like a mess for the next 4 or 5 years. And it would be unfortunate if Deshaun Watson wasted his talent being a top 5 quarterback in Houston while they're trying to, sort their issues out and maybe put together a good team. You don't really know how that's going to go. And I want to see someone like Watson playing for a contender, not just wasting away, on a team like Houston. The only other thing that I have to talk about, just one last notable signing that I wanted to bring up. The Bears have signed a rival and former Packers defensive coordinator Mike Pettin. If you did not know, he was the Packers DC earlier on this past season. He was released due to the struggle the last couple of years the defense has had. It seems like the Bears are hoping that with their roster being a little bit better defensively than the Packers, because you can't argue they do on paper have a handful of player names that would be better than what you have on the Green Bay Packers, that Pettin will be able to maybe take their defense a little bit further. The Green Bay Packers defense statistically was better than the Bears, so this is in theory an upgrade for them anyways, just because their defense last year was not as good as Green Bay's, but they have the player group to be a top 5, top 10 defense. So hopefully with Pettin going over there, learning from the mistakes maybe that he's made over in Green Bay, that'll end up working out for Tampa Bay. But that's kind of just like a who's who. Let's see if it happens. Whether or not it does, that'll remain to be seen. Beyond that, just to kind of give you guys a preview for next week's show and kind of going forward, obviously the offseason now and the NFL draft is going on, or coming up rather. There's no combine stuff. Tomorrow, Trevor Lawrence is going to be throwing for scouts and everything. That's going to be on the NFL Network, so I'm definitely going to be tuning into that. I will be following all the offseason trades, free agency signings, rumors, analysis, everything that's going on throughout the entire offseason, leading up into the NFL draft and then into the NAL season once that kicks off in late May. That's kind of how the show is going to be looking going forward. We're going to be leaving, the playoffs and Super Bowl behind us now after this week. If you're ever watching along, like I said, this is an interactive show. I am more than happy to be talking to the people that are in the chat section. If you guys have questions, things that you want to talk about, whatever it may be, please feel free to fire in the way in the chat. I'm always looking over, just checking to see if anything's being said. If you want to ask me questions, I've had people pop in here every now and again to ask stuff, and I'm always sure to answer it right away because it typically coincides with whatever it is that I'm talking about. So feel free to fire away questions, comments, things like that. If you leave a comment later on and I go through the section and I see it, I'll be more than happy to talk about it on the next show if people are asking about it. But other than that, that's pretty much everything for the show. Another shorter one. Again, not a whole bunch to talk about, just some big things going on. I'm sure we'll have some more things to talk about as we roll through this weekend with the potential trades and stuff like that, the rumors going around. I am very, very curious to see what goes on with this Russell Wilson situation, because this kind of came out of left field with him voicing his frustrations, doing interviews about it, saying he wants to get, not saying that he wants to get out, but people within his camp saying he's that frustrated that it's a potential thing where he might try to force his way out. And Brandon Marshall, a former teammate of his, going out of his way to say, hey, you know what? I know Russell Wilson. I think he is frustrated to the point where he's trying to make a classy exit out of Seattle. That's big. When you have a player who played with him and potentially knows him well, that's big. And I mean, the stats don't lie. Almost 400 sacks in 9 seasons. It's the record since the AFL-NFL merger. The Seahawks have not done a good job protecting him. I would not blame Russell Wilson if he wants to get on out of there. In my opinion, though, if he really wants to get some offensive line help, he's going to have to give up some of the money that's in his contract, do something similar to what Brady or Brees was doing, taking a little bit less money so that the team could really build around them and be successful. I mean, you look at the success Brady has, 7 rings. It's not because he was the highest paid quarterback. He was barely in the top 10 for a long time in his career. And even right now, he's only making $25 million a year. That's well below what other quarterbacks are pulling in, where some are sitting at $35 million plus. So if he really wants that offensive line built up around him, taking a pay cut's probably going to be the way for him to be successful with that. But outside of that, that's pretty much everything for the show. I appreciate anyone who has sat around and watching me live. For those of you that are watching back later on, I am Ethan Christodoulou. This has been the Greeks Gridiron. Again, fire away in the comments your thoughts on Russell Wilson. Do you think he's going to go somewhere? Question of the day. Love to see what your guys' thoughts are on that. I do have a Twitter. I have an Instagram page. My Instagram is my first name and last name that you see at the beginning on the nameplate of the show. My Twitter is at Greeks Gridiron. I have a Facebook page as well. If you want to go like that, you can share it with your friends. If you know anyone who loves football who would love to check this out, send me their way. I'm just constantly working on how to improve my show. This is actually the very first time I pulled up any video feeds on the show, and I'm excited with how smooth that went. So I'm constantly trying to evolve myself. I guess for a little bit of a background explanation as to why I'm doing this, I am currently in school for broadcasting. My goal is to get myself somewhere on television covering the NFL. That would be an absolute dream job of mine. So I figured, why not get a jump on it, get some practice in front of a microphone and camera, and see how I am and kind of work and improve on myself from there. But enough about that. That is the show. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday afternoons. Have a good rest of your weekend, everybody. We're live every Monday and Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, so we'll be back next week. Have a good rest of your day.
When I see you dancing, I'm like, hola, 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 hola. With your move fancy, make me wanna hola, 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 hola. I got your attention, spending that moolah, 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 moolah. I'm a drop popping, pocket, swola, 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 swola.
You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Christodoulou.
Swola, swola, swola.